You all have my royal permission to get back to partying. I'm Anthony.
I'm Damon.
I'm David.
I'm Kirby.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Jim.
Welcome to issue number 150 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. Hold for applause.
Yay!
Yeah, it's got to be a special one when Katie's actually got video on here.
Hi.
We finally get to meet Katie.
Yes.
And I was mentioning how she's got the best video. I think she has the natural sunlight that's a perfectly lit studio behind her there. So
The really
in the sound booth.
Yes.
So this is the 150th episode of this club podcast. It's mostly going to be a normal format, but we're going to have some fun retrospective happening. So in the first segment here, we're going to do the weekly reviews. We all have a comic to talk about. We're going to go all around the internet and talk about that comic. And then we will jump over to a sort of Q&A segment with one half of the owners of the Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles, David. Maybe Kurt will pop up in a surprise or something. I don't know what's happening behind
I doubt it. I did try to get him for today, and there were some scheduling conflicts, and I'm sure he tried really hard to be here, or be here via the internet, but he just couldn't make it work.
Well, we will make the rest of it work. We're going to have that segment there, and we'll all kind of share some, maybe a memory or a question for David in that round as well. But there is some business to take care of before we start into the weekly reviews. I was listening to this podcast called Under the Cowl of MS, and I do have a correction to make for this podcast. There was an episode recently about Captain Marvel, and there was a statement made that Captain Marvel was a character hated by somebody named Anthony, referring to me. So I do have to correct whoever does that podcast that was false information, fake news, if you will. So I just had to get that out there and kind of clear the record, make sure everybody knows.
So you're saying you do love Billy Batson?
No, you'll have to listen to Under the Cowl of MS and subscribe and like and share and all that stuff to find out which
So
Captain
now
Marvel
you're saying you do hate Captain Marvel?
Yes, it's kind of the opposite of how Eric feels about Frankencastle. How much he loves Frankencastle is how much Anthony hates Captain Marvel.
And actually, you just stepped on my joke, because I have written that this announcement was brought to you by the I Love Frankencastle Foundation, which is created by Eric. So just wanted to get that business all out of there. All right, so this is the weekly review segment. I'm going to kick it off with one that I was very excited for. This is Stillwater, issue number 1. This is by Chip Zdarsky and Ramon Perez and Mike Spicer. Nobody dies in the town of Stillwater. That's not just a promise, it's a threat. That is the simple premise of this. Chip Zdarsky, who in the last couple of years has been quite the superstar writer, started off as an artist, as we know him, of the series Sex Criminals, which is just wrapped up, I believe, with issue 69 appropriately, even though they didn't do issues like 20 or 30 issues in between the last number. He's been a superstar writer over at Marvel, and now he's been doing a lot of independent work as well. So Stillwater is a horror book, which is basically new territory for him. And it is simply about a guy named Dan who is fired from his job right off the bat. He goes out with a friend named Tony. He goes out to basically get drunk and just kind of blow off some steam. And the next morning he gets a letter in the mail that he's being called to the town of Stillwater. I think it's like a great aunt that passed away, or some sort of extended relative that he has no idea who they are, that it's a possible inheritance for him. So here he is, down on his luck, just lost his job, and here's a road trip opportunity between himself and his buddy Tony. So they go on this road trip to go to Stillwater. It's one of those kind of horror premises where Stillwater's not on the map. They stop at a gas station. Nobody has even heard of Stillwater. As they get kind of closer to the border, they meet some characters in Stillwater that they happen to stumble upon that are kind of giving them warnings up front. There's a lot of weird stuff happening in this town. It's such a great first issue premise for like a classic horror movie. It's hitting it's checking all the boxes that you would expect for a horror movie setup. And then some crazy stuff happens in the third act, which I won't say. That's for you to find out. I was just blown away and fully on board for this book. I went in blind just knowing that Chip Zdarsky, this was something that I wanted to read because he's just on fire. And then he had awesome art by Ramon Perez. And so I think if you're a horror fan, and I think this will be fun. There's still a lot of mystery to it. So it doesn't just like give you everything in the first issue of like, oh, this is what this series is about. And this is, our main threat or villain or something. So it just does enough to kind of really set the tone, but move it pretty fast so you're not just, sitting in one scene. So, I really absolutely loved Stillwater. So that is issue number 1 of what I assume is a potential ongoing series. I don't think there was a limited series advertisement, so I'm hoping there's more beyond the first arc. So Stillwater, issue number 1. We'll move over to Damon for the next one.
My pick this week was a Kickstarter book. It's called OMG. It's a horror anthology. This is the number 1 issue. It was very popular on the Kickstarter, and they are going to do a future issue. Basically, what this is it's an anthology with 6 separate stories in there, all written by different authors and drawn by different artists. So it's kind of like a mix. He got all the best people that he could and created this nice book. So it's nice. One story is different than the other. There's not really a big central theme, so it's kind of like 6 individual stories, and it's pretty good. The art is good. The first one it's real bloody. It deals with a chupacabra, and that's how it. I can't get rid of the glare, but the art is pretty good, pretty violent. There's some humor in it. It is safe. There's no nudity. In fact, for a joke, they even put a censor bar on there just to be a joke, because that's usually one of the things in a horror movie is there's usually a topless woman somewhere. So just to cross that check mark, they threw that in there, but censored it to keep it fun.
Or is that some brand new interesting tube top of the future that we haven't seen yet?
Yeah, that'd be fun. There is a little one.
I just thought of a good Halloween costume.
Not for you. Please say no. It's not for you.
Can't wait for the Halloween episode of the Crimson Cowl.
I know there's
They have to do like a virtual costume contest and everything this year.
Oh yeah.
There was a short story on knowing your enemy and how all the numbers were down on all the killers. So you can see like on this page, you have, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, a variety of popular killers, and how no one is scared of them. And then the morale speaker giving the speech on how it's best to change your ways is the coronavirus.
Oh wow.
And then on the bottom they like toast, like, yes, we're back, and they're gonna follow his advice. So it was fun. The stories were short, the stories were good. There was a little bit of everything in here. Sorry, Shelley, no vampires, but you do get a werewolf. and a chupacabra and some satire in it, and it was a fun little book. It's a double-sized issue because with the 6 short stories, and it's a fun little Halloween read. Get you a way to start the October season coming up. So it was a fun little book. I think he's selling them on his website if you missed the Kickstarter. And definitely I'll be joining whenever the second issue comes to Kickstarter. I'll be picking that one up too. So that's OMG.
Cool. All right, let's jump over to Kirby for the next one.
Yeah, Brother Nash. American Gods meets Preacher and Hellboy on the winding road to Sacramento. Neshoba, Nash, to his friends, is a trucker. He also sees ghosts, but there are more terrifying things than ghosts roaming the highways of America at night, and Nash needs to survive them all to see the dawn. When Nash takes on a mysterious hitchhiker heading for Tucson, he and his friends are dragged into their biggest, craziest, and most dangerous adventure yet. It's like, I like this one quote was loaded with humor, mystery, horror, and a great sense of friendship and family, fun, fresh, and well worth a look, from Chuck's Comic of the Day. It's basically, when he starts out, he picks up the hitchhiker and just cruising down the road, and just the way he's playing throughout it, it's in there, the hitchhiker, you kind of get the sense that he's just out to do something to him, and then all of a sudden they hit the spot in the road, and this pink mist surrounds the semi, and all these ghosts appear on top of the semi with their horses and wagons and all that. It's basically a lost group that was traveling to the gold rush and didn't quite make it. They got plagued with disease and all that, and all died before they could even get to California. And I don't really want to ruin the whole concept of Nash's character, but he basically works with them and does stuff with the dead, and character riding with them gets to see a ghost mule or a ghost bull talking to him, and then they come across some other characters down the road, giant insect characters and stuff. Yeah, like this guy, he's basically a walking beehive. He can shoot, bees will come out of him, and all of a sudden he opens up and just tons of bees just come flying out of him. There's a trucker friend of Nash's that he's just pulled over on the side of the road, and all of a sudden he comes across this little praying mantis, and this praying mantis is just starts hanging out with him. He starts feeding the mantis these little cheese crackers and stuff, and all of a sudden they're in the truck, he's crashed out, and all of a sudden the mantis just expands to a giant size, busts outside of his truck and stuff like that. There's all kinds of different giant spider creatures and stuff like that in here that they have to deal with throughout their adventures through the road. But it's nice because you hook up with Nash's family. You got your Native American background in here. You got some Mexican background. You get he basically travels and hangs out with his friends and family throughout the whole story, and then they just fight and deal with the dangers around him and stuff. And then like one character that gets killed along the way, they need to bring him back to ask him questions, and when they bring him back, he comes back as a talking cactus with one cactus arm sticking out. So when he's arguing with Nash, he just starts beating him in the head with his own cactus hand. And but yeah, it's a very fun story. And then you got things like a baby head cemetery that they go to, and just cemetery full of all these dead kids, and they start to come to life and talk to them and all the spirits and stuff. It's just
not creepy at all.
Like that, you didn't really enjoy this book. Shelly picked it up somewhere strange, I think, at some bookstore that she just came across a good deal, and I had not expected it to be that good, but it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, here I thought it was going to be another Kevin Nash comic. I'm like, how many comics has he written?
It's done by Titan Comics, and Bridget Connell's the one that did it.
Cool. All right. Then we will jump over to our Jedi ambassador to the podcast here, Katie.
Hi, it's so good to be joining you. So this week I have another epic collection. It is Star Wars The New Republic Volume 2, and I am so excited to own this book. I love this series. I've actually read quite a few of them from the library. This is all about the X-Wing Rogue Squadron pilots. So Wedge Antilles, Tycho Selku, Corran Horn will be in it later. Whole bunch just of big names from the New Republic. I love these books. They're awesome. X-Wing fighter pilots trying to liberate planets from the Empire, trying to restore order in the galaxy post-Endor. Just everything in here is a fantastic adventure. It's so much fun. It just makes me feel good to read it. The characters are really well fleshed out. A lot of great action. The X-Wings and the TIEs look so cool. I got nothing but good things to say about this book. If you have read the X-Wing books, Michael Stackpole, the writer of many of them, is also the writer on several of these. So that could be a big plus. And yeah, it collects X-Wing Rogue Leader 1 through 3, X-Wing Rogue Squadron 1 through 16 and special, and then materials from Star Wars Tales 12 and 23. That's my review on Star Wars The New Republic Volume 2.
Hey,
Cool.
Katie, have you read the original paperbacks by Stackpole, the original X-Wing series?
Yes, sir. I love them.
Okay, good. Because I'm looking at them right now. I saw these two epic collections myself. Are these just a retelling of those, or are these different stories?
Fantastic question. These are different stories. These actually take place a little bit before the books. So yes, new stories, some new characters. Definitely worth grabbing. These are some of my favorite of the Star Wars comics, and maybe some of my favorite comics that I've read. So definitely worth picking them up.
Corran Horn is one of my favorite characters from the paperbacks.
Yes.
So,
I agree. He's the GOAT.
So all right, cool. I stayed away from them because I thought it was just a rehash of the paperbacks, but I'm glad that it's completely different stories, so you're not really double dipping.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, cool. I'm glad I could answer your question.
Thanks.
You're
And
welcome.
correct me if I'm wrong, but all of these Star Wars epic collections, it seems like you have a lot of them. And if you put them together, is it itself an epic collection?
Yes, it is. And I'm actually having fun creating and building my own epic collection of epic collections. So yeah, I want to say right now there's like maybe 35 of them, with 2 more scheduled to come out this year and 1 for the spring. So definitely worth getting.
Cool. All right. We are going to jump over to Jim for the next title.
All right. I have the official 1,000 issues of Batman and Detective 1027. As most of us already know, Batman originally appeared in Detective Comics number 27 in 1939. And this is now 1,000 issues later, 80-some years. And they did a great job putting together 144 pages of 12 different stories, of Batman stories, for just $10. And it was definitely worth it. And there's just everybody writing in here, writing and doing the art, just the writers. We have Tomasi, Bendis, Fraction, Rucka, Tinian, DeConnick, Wolfman, Morrison, King, Snyder, Jurgens, and Tamaki.
And I'm going to throw this out there, and art by Chip Zdarsky, who got to draw Batman now. So
yeah, he's in there too, yeah. There was a little bit of everything. A couple of my favorite stories were Odyssey, which was the Detective 26, which was by Grant Morrison, which takes back goes back, imagines what would have happened in issue 26 if they knew Batman was coming out the next one. And it goes back to a guy who decides to become a costume hero. He gets himself all set up with a costume and car and all that. Goes out into Gotham City to start fighting crime. And just as he starts his career, Batman appears and he goes, well, we're not worth it anymore, and he retires. So that was fun. There's another story that deals with Bruce Wayne funding a trip to recover a ship that sank, much like the Titanic. And the team he recruits to do this are all descendants of the original detectives from the other stories in Detective 27. There's one of Slam Bradley, who is the most commonly used. One of his, there's 5 or 6 others, and they're all descended from that. That one was fun. There is probably the last story I really liked. It was called The Gift by Mariko Tamaki, and that one, not only does it touch on the current Joker War, which is appearing in both Batman comics and all the Bat Family comics, but it also has kind of a preview of what's going to happen in issue 1028 of Detective Comics. And it's going to go in a little bit different direction. The other one that's dealing with current continuity is, or not current continuity, but current issue is Generations Fractured, and gives us a little taste of what was probably supposed to happen in the Generation 5 stuff that's now kind of on the shelf, but they still have some things that are going to be coming out from that. And it does a little time bending. It takes Batman from current day to all of a sudden he's going through this phase where he ends up from his current look to what he looks like in the very original issue of Detective 27, excuse me. And he's got the really big ears, that look, and all of a sudden he's joined by somebody in glowing light, and we find out it's Kamandi, the last boy. And it's not just Kamandi as we normally see him. He's got this gold cyborg type arm that all of a sudden starts talking to him. Beep, beep, beep. You find out he was sent by Booster, and that his arm is apparently Skeet's. So instead of being a little floating robot, he is now Kamandi's cyborg arm. So this is going to be something interesting to read in the Generations books that are coming out in the next few months too. So, and like I said, there's 12 different stories in here, and there was not a bad story. There was one story that was not really a Batman story called The Rookie, and it deals with a woman who joins the Gotham City Police and swears her oath, goes out on patrol, and finds out like the whole or most of the department is corrupt, but she still ends up keeping her vow, and at the end of the story is recruited by Gordon into the Gotham Police Major Crimes Unit, which is, in many of the stories, is the unit that he himself directs. So that one was good too. So yeah, very worthwhile book for $10. You get a lot of great value for your money.
Cool. Yeah, I dug it as well. I got the Jim Lee cover. I think that was a variant. I'm not sure which one you got there.
This, I believe, is the main cover.
Main one.
And it's the wraparound.
Nice.
All right. Okay.
But yeah, it was pretty well put together, especially at the page count and the price that you had mentioned too. It was a pretty good celebration.
Now, did they do the amount of variant covers that they did for Detective Comics 1000?
There was
a lot of them.
Yeah, because there was an all red one, but it must have been it wasn't in the catalog at all, so it must be some website exclusive or something. And so yeah, there was quite a few of them. So maybe 1,027 of them, I think. Okay, so this next one here, we have a pre-recorded review from Eric, who jumps in from time to time. There is a book that he read called Dead Day. I'm going to queue up his video here in a second as I get the share screen going on. But yeah, he pre-recorded this here. You might need to enable it, David.
I think it is. We'll find out in a second, I guess.
Okay, let me hit it again once. Yeah, it says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Well,
I would say maybe. All right. Now we're good. Okay, here we go.
are you? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, it popped up for the option to do it. Okay, I'm gonna share. I think.
Oh, there we go.
Do we all see him?
Hey there, Eric here. I feel like a broken record because I seem to keep bringing up Aftershock titles. The pick I have for this week is Dead Day. Many of us have probably been asked the question, what would you do if you could spend a night with someone that you've lost? This comic attempts to answer that question. In it, there is a day, it doesn't happen every year, and they don't exactly know why, but these people called the revivalists are able to predict it. It's called Dead Day, where people who die and their bodies are intact can actually come back fully sentient, not as zombies. Now, of course, there's a lot of social implications here, because now it turns out just because a person is dead, it's not the end. So if you ever wronged a person and it led to their death, it can come back. Also, now police have to face the people they killed. Whether it was justified or not, they're coming back. And where those bodies go it's affected by, how they died. Now, the government even has agents in graveyards, basically to help those who have passed reconnect. Now, much of the story is actually told through the lens of a family. There is Melissa, whose husband was murdered, and she made a promise in life to him that she would help right the wrong. She's currently married to Brandon, who has one child with her, Jewel, the daughter. The son, however, is the son of Jeremy. You'll be quiet, you stupid cat. Okay. Anyhow. So we see that Melissa now goes to meet her dead husband. Brandon has to basically deal with the fallout from that. And the son, Daniel, is actually, somewhat honeypotted by a young lady who is a member of the revivalists. So you get to see how, different cults form regarding this. Again, like I said, Aftershock, they just seem to keep on coming out with titles that, really reel me in with the first issue. It's currently on the third issue. I've only read to the second. But so far, I like it. It's, the dead aren't simply zombies. They're people who've come back with unfinished business. And another thing I like about it, each issue has opened with a poem. And I just want to recite the first one from On Death by John Keats. Can death be sleep when life is but a dream, and scenes of bliss pass as a phantom by? The transient pleasures as a vision seen, and yet we think the greatest pains to die. How strange it is that man on earth should roam and lead a life of woe, but not forsake his rugged path, nor dare he view alone his future doom, which is but to awake. I think they picked their verses very carefully. And so far, at least from the first two issues I've read, it sets the tone very nicely. So I don't know how many issues are going to be in this. I know I've ordered up to issue 5. I'm still waiting to see if there's an issue 6. Personally, this is something I would like to see, go on. This is something that could definitely go on in real time. But I guess I'm just going to have to wait, find out, and just keep reading. So you like interesting sentient zombies with an axe to grind, definitely give Dead Day a check.
Cool. All right, so thank you, Eric, for that. I think the screen share has ended.
I believe that character from Under the Cowl of MS attacks that Eric person also over his some type of Franken-Punisher beliefs.
Yeah, that would be that's something interesting.
He might be coming after all the people from the podcast.
Oh, is that right? Not just
Setting them all straight.
But yeah, if somebody can never make it to the club, it's always good to have a pre-recorded video. Eric has done this a couple times, and you know what? I'm just getting a quick message here. Let me do the share screen again once. Let's see. Maybe there's a special guest or something. Let's see. Does this work?
I've got a big picture of Eric.
Yep.
In front of
That's
me.
all you see on there?
That is all I see.
Dang it! I came up with this late, so I actually just created a thought balloon that says "I love Frankencastle," and I have it plastered on his video. But I guess that image doesn't show up under there, so damn it. All right, well, I'll take a picture of it and we'll pretend it happened. And so let's all laugh right now. Excellent. I'm glad that little prank worked. So take that, Eric. Stop share. Okay, so that is going to conclude our weekly segment. But we have one special 150th celebration segment coming up right after the page turn. Okay. Yep, I thought of that like towards like the last like 40 seconds. I quick drew up a thought balloon, and apparently that wasn't working.
And after 150, you're finally letting people know what that sound effect is.
Yes.
I do think it's been mentioned before.
Yeah. Now can you see the Frankencastle?
Yes, but only the... Yeah, so it's not like over the picture of him.
Yeah, I think I can only choose one or the other. So that was a little lesson that I learned in screen sharing. Okay. Let me close out that because he will have a video in the next segment too. So maybe by that time I'll figure out how to do it. So okay, let's save this. We are recording. And let me just get back to my screen here.
I love all these fascinating behind-the-scenes moments that we have.
Okay, I got it. So now the list is on my computer screen rather than me looking at the phone and not looking, it makes it look like I've, memorized these a bit. So.
Like you're not just reading it off of some other...
Yeah, I'm reading off a
That's a
cue
little
card that's
teleprompter.
off in the distance rather than in my hand. So
Tammy's over
Okay.
at your house holding up cards.
I figured at least had the Silver Surfer hold your cue card for you.
who are you talking about? What do you mean? Oh, this guy?
I
Well, maybe
see
you can't
him
recognize
gagged
him.
because he hasn't stopped screaming yet.
That's why he's gagged.
Okay. All right, new segment. Here we go. Welcome back. That was an awesome page turn, don't you agree? For all of our audio listeners only. All right, so in this segment here, we are celebrating 150 issues of this here podcast, which spun out of Crimson Cowl Comic Club, that we did a couple of them unrecorded. We did it at the old store location. But what we're going to do in this segment here, we are going to throw it over to David, who is co-owner of the Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles. And we're going to have some questions for him, and then we'll do some little interludes with some of our members here to kind of bring up a memory or a question or whatever you want to say on behalf of the Crimson Cowl. So we're going to kick it off here. David, when was the earliest you can remember that you wanted to open up a comic shop as a dream before it actually became a reality?
Okay. Well, really, I mean, probably the first time that I ever thought about it was back when I first started collecting. I was kind of in awe of seeing some of these shops and like how people would come in, and then like I could come in and people would talk to me about comics. If I didn't know about something, I needed a recommendation. I had questions about something or whatever. There were people that would actually, discuss this stuff. And I didn't feel like they were like pushing anything on me or judging me because I might be interested in a book that they didn't like or whatever. But, I always thought, well, that would be cool. And, I thought about working at a comic book store, which didn't actually happen. I had applied and it didn't work out and everything. So I hadn't really thought about it for a long time. But I think it kind of was there in the back of my mind. And then many, many years later, like early 2000s, I kind of started thinking about it, how I missed that. And I didn't have that experience anymore. Even the old shop that I frequented, it just wasn't the same anymore. And I thought that would be great to have here in West Bend, because I came from more of the Milwaukee area. I moved up in West Bend in 2000, and it was shortly after that I realized that they didn't have that here. There was a comic book store, but it wasn't really what I thought of that I would have liked to have had. And then I'd really have to think about what year they closed, because once they weren't in business, then I really started thinking about how West Bend really needed a place like this. And so that's kind of when I really started thinking about it and kind of going, okay, I want to do this. I want to start planning and getting ready and actually making that happen at some point. And I would drive through like downtown or whatever, and I'd see buildings and be like, I could just picture them as a comic book store and what it would look like. And so I started visualizing what a store would look like and everything, but I didn't really have the means to make it happen. So that kind of happened later. So yeah, sometime for early 2000s is when it really started taking a little bit more form. And then a little bit later after that, when I kind of went, okay, yeah, I want to do this.
Cool. And if anyone too, after he answers these questions, if you wanted to add anything, feel free. So just either butt in or raise your hand, and I can kind of moderate it that way. But first, we'll jump over to Damon. If you had any a question or just comments or just your experience with the cowl, go ahead.
I was just gonna share like my first memories of the cowl, which kind of piggybacks off of what David just said. I first got into comics about a year and a half ago, and I never read comics as a kid, and I came into the comic book world looking for stories that I knew wouldn't come out in film or TV shows. So I love like Batman and Aliens and Predator and stuff, and
Buffy, Archie.
I knew we couldn't get through it without you bringing her up, but yeah. What are you gonna do? So I went to a couple of shops that were within a couple hour drive. I didn't even know Crimson Cowl actually existed, and they weren't what David was talking about. They weren't friendly. They weren't trying to help, and it was a little bit overwhelming to walk into the comic book world and not know where to start. There's so much history and everything. And then I found out that there was a comic shop right here in West Bend, and I walked in the Crimson Cowl, and David was different. He actually set me up. He told me where some good jumping on points were for some of the series I was interested in. He took the time to actually, teach me and give me some knowledge, and that kind of meant a lot. And then he invited me into the club, and I met all of you, and got new friends out of it, and got a lot of knowledge that has helped me. And now I pretty much have my own, I'm at my own place in the comics where I know I can function on my own. I know what to order. I know where I'm at, what I like to read. And all that basically came from David and Crimson Cowl. And so thank you for that. And that was my first memory. That's why I stuck around, because it seemed like he was the only one that took the time to actually care for his customers and help them out. And some other shops just don't seem to care. And that's why some of them are closed now. And it's very hard for brick and mortars to compete if they don't treat their customers well or act like they don't give a shit.
But it's hard anyways.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, I'm sure that's why a lot of people here that are listening or participating in this podcast are still here, because David took the time to help everyone out and make you feel like part of the club and not just another customer.
Excellent. All right, I'll jump into the next question here. David, when you opened in the basement era to build inventory and clientele, how long did you think you'd be down there before you found the brick and mortar location? Just how long did you intend for the basement era to last?
Not real long. I think we kind of went into it. There was a lot of planning involved. We actually got our business license and everything several months, probably a good 6 months or so before even going to the basement thing. We took a lot of time in the planning and preparations, but we knew that right off the bat we weren't going to be able to find a brick and mortar. So I think once we got things set up here in the basement, it was I think we suspected it would take about 3 months or so. As kind of, we didn't know exactly, but I think that was kind of about what we figured was, that hopefully within about 3 months, very short amount of time, and we would have a brick and mortar and it'd all be set up. But of course it took a little bit longer, and I think we were actually trying to think how long it was.
August to March?
Yeah, it was August to March. So we opened up August that year, and then March is when we got in. So we found the place probably February or maybe even late January, and we were able to move in by March. So yeah, it was more than the 3 months, but that was good. It was it worked out pretty well for us. We were able to build our customer base a little bit, and we were able to get more inventory. We were able to get a little bit more of the things that we needed to make things successful once we were over there. So it really worked out that it took that little bit longer for us to do it, I think.
And how was that overall experience in the basement from August to March, building that small community at that time?
It was interesting because we had no idea. Opening a comic book store in a basement in a house, and we were hesitant about doing it, and we tried to work it a way that we were just sort of bending some rules a little bit versus just breaking laws and whatever to open a business. And then there were people that were aware of what we were doing. I talked to somebody even from the police department because they were contacting businesses and things like that about security measures. I think there had been some break-ins and whatever. And I talked to him at that point and let them know it was at this in the house. And it was reported in the newspaper that I was running this out of my house, until we could find a spot and whatever. And it seemed to be not really a big deal. And I think part of that was because it was, everybody understood this was a temporary thing until we get up and running. but still, you tell people, they're expecting a comic book store, and you tell them that, yeah, it's in my basement. Uh, and you kind of have to wonder, like, are people going to come in here, or do they go to the house and go, I don't want to go in some guy's basement. I don't
Yeah,
know.
were you going to get any weirdos that would just like show up and be there from open to close that you've never met before, just, sitting down on the couch or something,
Right from day one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah? No.
Yeah, right away. Um, but really it was pretty normal. I mean, we had just customers that would come in, and they'd come down the steps, and it seemed like I don't know how many people avoided coming down here, but the people that came in didn't seem to have a problem with it, and they came in, and I think we'd gotten several comments about how amazed people actually were. I don't think what you see as a background does justice, because not everything's set up, but people came down and you felt like you were in a comic book store. You didn't feel like you were down in somebody's dirty, dank basement. We had racks and bookcases and a spinner rack and display cases and things like that all set up. So yeah, it was in a basement, but it very much did feel like you were in a store. So I think that helped, and word seemed to spread a little bit, and people would let other people know, or the people that came maybe out of curiosity on the first day, a number of those people returned. What was interesting though is that there were customers that seemed to come down to the basement that didn't really transition over once we had a brick and mortar. Just like at the same time we had brick and mortar, those customers that came in after that had never been in the basement. So it was kind of weird. In fact, we'd even got probably one or two comments from customers that had been in the basement, and then we went over there, and as great as that store was, they would be, I kind of missed the basement.
Yeah, it had this real kind of cool underground, if you will, vibe to it, and it just felt like a secret society. Like it was like you're just walking on the street and you see a sign pointing in the alley. It says comics this way or something, and you're just like, wait, what's going on here? And then, yeah, like you said, you didn't step into that basement. You stepped into a secret comic shop, and that you had this invite to, and you're like, oh wow, this is it created such a cool vibe the whole time. So
Yeah, and it wasn't like I was standing in some back alley in my trench coat, like, hey buddy, you want to buy a comic? It was advertised. Like I said, I mean, we got lucky that the West Bend Daily News picked up on it, and I don't even remember how that happened, but they did a story that we were going to be opening, and so that helped. It drew in a little bit of traffic, and then we were fortunate that they decided to follow up on it when we got the brick and mortar, and they did another story, and again got some more people in. So I think that helped, surprisingly, because we found later that doing advertisements in a newspaper was a complete waste of money, but doing an article in it, having it seemed to help, and that brought people in that wouldn't have found us otherwise. And it was great that they did, because we had a pretty good, even like first day that we opened up, we did really good with the number of people that came in and bought stuff. And a lot of those people just came in for the curiosity and checked it out, and then there were other people that just kept coming back, and at least one person that just showed up, sat down on the sofa and just stayed there until we kicked them out.
Yeah, I wouldn't know who that would describe it all, so we'll just never know. We'll jump over to Kirby. Did you have any thing to say for the call or question or anything?
I didn't get the pleasure to go to the basement before the shop, but once I met Anthony, and Anthony introduced me to David, and then I finally went and checked out the shop, which I probably drove by down the road many times before, never even knew there was a shop down there. And I went in, and there's this quiet guy sitting at the counter, and then David popped it out of the back room and invited me to go into a back room to show me some things. No, that's
As possible as that was, it sounds much worse than I'm sure it would have been.
I had access to comics for a long time. I read when I was younger, and then I just gave up because I hated reading. For some reason, I just got it in my mind where reading was a waste of time. And if it wasn't for Anthony introducing me to David and getting into Crimson Cowl, I probably would have just been selling comics and not reading them to this day. And thanks to all that, I got into it, and now I prefer reading over watching movies and TV and stuff. I'll watch movies while I'm reading a comic, not even pay attention to it. I wouldn't have got into podcasting probably if it wasn't for all this. I would have just been putting it all off or whatever. And it was something that was perfect at the right time. It just, sadly, I didn't get in there earlier and had more time with it. And I still I don't think I'll ever get rid of the nightmares from the Life Day party. That'll be stuck with me for forever. But yeah, met a lot of
that's a blessing, not a curse, if you ask me.
yeah, that's what they say. But yeah, met a lot of great people, and it's probably the best thing that happened in quite some time. So
Awesome.
Hopefully we'll have a shop again someday.
Well,
All right.
never know what the future might hold.
I know a little bit what the future might hold because I have some pre-written questions here. When you found the location on Barton Avenue, did it take long to decide where everything would go? How do you kind of map out your comic shop and be like, okay, the register will be here, and we can put this over here, and we can use this room for this? Was there, I assume, a lot of excitement of just getting into a new home, if you will, and just figure out where everything's going to go? Can you kind of talk about that?
Sure, I can talk about that. No, it was an ongoing process, of course, as everybody knows. I was always moving stuff around. But a lot of that had to do with growing, and as we'd get more things in, I'd have to go, okay, well, we'd have room. And Kurt would be like, oh, we can't put that out. We don't have any room for it. And I'd be like, challenge accepted. And I would, move things around and set things up and get it out there. But when we first moved in, we kind of walked in, and the first thing was there was like a front section and then a back room. And initially it was kind of disappointing that it wasn't a little bit more open. And at the same time, I think right away we started thinking about ways that we could use the back room. So, and we kind of always knew that the back room wouldn't be for merchandise. We thought, okay, we could do gaming in there or whatever. And then we walked up front, and it didn't take much to figure out, where we thought the counter should be and where the comics were going to be, and the general layout of it. That all came pretty quick, going in there and just kind of looking around. You could sort of visualize everything. And then moving it in and setting it up, you realize that it's a little bit different than how you visualized it, because I don't know, my mind, I guess, isn't very good with like imagining, the size of some of the furniture and stuff like that, and you'd have to make some adjustments, once you get everything measured and moved in and everything. But for the most part, we went in and we kind of figured, okay, the counter should be over here, and this is where we're going to keep the racks. We knew that wall was going to be where we were going to set up comic book racks. We had some ideas on some of the other stuff, how to put our toys and other collectibles in there, where to put the one bookcase that we had with the trades, as opposed to like the 3 bookcases full of trades that we had at the end, 3 plus. Yeah, so things changed a lot, from the beginning, when we really expanded a lot of how we did the racks. In fact, at some point I completely redid and rebuilt racks to accommodate all the different comics that we were ordering at that point. And so it definitely was just an ongoing process, from the beginning. But, if it answers the question, pretty quickly when we looked at the place, we had ideas that stuck and worked out, and that's what we went with.
And how was the reaction to that first day when you, the grand opening, here you are, got a full store, open up to many more people than, that maybe weren't, or were a little cautious to go into a basement, but here there is a physical store you can go into. So do you remember the first day?
Well, I remember the first day. What I remember most about the first day is how there weren't people coming in. And so we were pretty nervous, and it took a little bit, and all of a sudden they started rolling in, and in the end, it ended up being a good first day. But it took a little bit. People weren't just like barging through the door. They weren't lined up and waiting for us to unlock it and throw the open sign on. So it did take a little bit, and Kurt and I were both nervous because we planned, we advertised for it, and yeah, just sitting there. And then I think it would come in waves too. So it's slow, and then people would come in, and you're like, okay, it's starting, and then all of a sudden it was dead again, and it's just like, oh, that was it. That was that was our big grand opening, and then you get another wave. So it wasn't unlike any other regular time, really. Because that's how your day goes. People come in waves. You're completely dead, or you got so many people out there. You're apologizing for taking so long. Writing everything down in our notepad and getting them rung up and out the door.
Yeah, and that was always fun whenever the free comic book days, the first Saturday in May every year, when that one happened, or anytime they happened, it was always exciting because typically I think every store can say that that's their busiest day. And so it's cool to kind of see that excitement. And, that's when you get several people deep. And while it could be frustrating and nervous to you feel like you should be moving quicker or something, but I think everyone was always pretty excited. I was always sitting there on the couch, just kind of bringing up conversations because if you're at Kohl's waiting in a line, you're just waiting in a line looking at your phone. You're probably not talking about, what Batman did on the TV screen that week or something. So yeah, I think waiting in line at a comic shop is a whole different experience than waiting in any other line at any other business.
Yeah, because at the grocery store, you don't have somebody just sitting on the couch over there, and somebody's waiting in a long line, and you're just like, so I see you got broccoli, and and strike up a conversation to pass the time. Yeah, you don't have that, but yeah, thanks to Anthony, we on our busy days, we had somebody there that would talk to the customers and kind of distract them from the waiting when we would get a little bit behind, because it was just me and Kurt behind the counter, and sometimes one of us would have to be off talking to a customer or whatever, and there was only one of us back there, but it was still busy. So thank you, Anthony, for all the time that you spent bothering the customers.
I think I bothered them enough that some of these members have joined the club. So Katie, if you want to jump in and say what you want to say about the Crimson Cowl.
I'd love to, and I want to tell you a story about Crimson Cowl Comics Collectibles and card detailing. So we talk a lot about how fortunate we are to have this great community of comic book fans, and I want to give you a really prime example of it. So in summer 2018, it was a pretty hot day, and I left the windows on my car cracked open. And we do our club, we do our shopping, I say goodbye, I leave, and I go out to the parking lot, and I see a bird, and it's by my window, and I think, oh, that's so cool, look how close that bird is to my window, it's reflecting in it and everything. And then I get closer, and I realize, oh no, it is not reflecting in my window. It is inside my window. And I walk over there. I'm like, oh my God, there's a bird in my car. And I freak out and I open the door and it just flies away. This poor bird had gotten in through the crack in my windows. And even though I had both of them open, it couldn't find its way out. So this poor thing is in my car, flying all around, losing its mind, making an awful mess everywhere. And my brain cannot think at all. So that poor bird flies away, probably has a heart attack. I run back into the store, and thankfully there was just one customer leaving, and David and Anthony are there, and I'm like, there's a bird in my car! And they will stop what they're doing. They're like, what did you say? And I'm like, there's a bird, and it was flying in my car. I need your help. And so both Anthony and David came out, and we were all laughing this whole time because it was so absurd. They came out with paper towels and Lysol wipes and cleaning spray and helped me clean up my car because the bird had left feathers and worse in it and everything, and it would have been terrible. And I think they spent about a half hour helping me clean my car, boosting me up, laughing with me. It was just absurd. And I think the one that got us into giggles and we couldn't stop was I had a box of Ritz crackers in my car, just the box. It didn't actually even have crackers in it. It was just the empty box for recycling. And David sees it, takes it, holds it up and says, yeah, instead of putting on the Ritz, it's putting on the shits. And I just bent over laughing so hard. And oh man, that is just probably a prime example of community, because if that were any other store, I mean, they probably would have hustled me out and told me, please don't come back anytime soon. But you all were so loving and so caring and so good-natured and good-humored that you helped me clean it up, and you made me feel better about the whole situation. And it was a great, unique memory that I have to tell you, I don't think I could duplicate otherwise. But yeah, Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles have become some of my dearest friends, to the point that you are all family to me, and I love you very, very much. And thank you for helping me clean my car. That is the one and only time we had Crimson Cowl Comics, Collectibles, and car detailing.
And Katie afterwards always made sure that we were stocked up on paper towel and Lysol wipes and stuff. She brought some in, and yeah, there was always paper towel around and everything, because you never know when the bird's gonna fly in your window and lose its stuff.
Yeah, the only other time we experienced that is when we had a #1 issue of Robin from DC Comics come out. So,
well, at least it wasn't Robin #2.
Ooh.
Oh no.
Touche.
Hey, we got revenge on that bird. I don't think that bird survived, but yeah. So.
Alrighty. Katie had mentioned
crap scared out of it.
Katie had mentioned family, which is a great setup for the next question here. You had an idea for the comic club that originally started in the basement, which kind of molded the idea of having those Saturdays, the one day a week in the basement era, kind of to serve as a comic book club. You always kind of had this vision, and this is episode of 150. If we went to the legacy numbering, there'd be many more club meetings, unofficial and otherwise. But kind of want to have you talk about the comic club idea that brewed in your mind from the start. So.
Oh, well, in the very beginning, going back to the basement days, part of it was just a creative way to get around things, because we couldn't. We had to be careful to not have a fully functioning store and whatever. It's different if people are, stopping by and picking up something that they bought online or whatever. Initially, my idea was, okay, we've got a website, and most of you probably don't know, Anthony, I don't know if you were even on the website. We were setting it up so that you could actually put in orders and everything in a website. And so our thought was, okay, well, we're doing online sales, but once a week we'll have a comic book club. And so people can just come on over from like 12 to 4, 12 to 5, whatever our time was.
12 to 5, I believe.
Yeah. So, and come over, sit down, pick up your stuff that you ordered, and, just pick it up in person here, which would have been fine. And then we'll sit around. We'll talk comics. You can, you don't have to stay the whole time. Anthony didn't get that memo, but you don't have to stay the whole time. You can come and go and just hang out for a little bit, leave, whatever works for you within that time period. So that was pretty much it. That was kind of our way around having a retail business in a residential zoned place. Hey, it's not a store, we're having a club. But we actually did intend to kind of stick to that, and we were telling people, hey, you can go on here and you can buy stuff, or we would just take orders and order the stuff, which that ended up happening, but people weren't using the website to do it. They were just letting us know on a Saturday when they came in, hey, I want you to order this and this and this, and they'd create their lists. So it quickly went from being an online sales thing with a in-person club to people were just buying it here, But that's really how it started out, was just the idea that, well, we want people in here. We want to start building these relationships so that when we have a store, we already have that customer base. But yeah, it kind of just worked out to where people were coming over and they were just buying the stuff, and it really was just a store on Saturdays. But we did get to sit down and talk and whatever, but there was no format to it. People just came and went as they got their comics, or would talk a little bit and then leave. It wasn't until we moved on to the brick and mortar store, and now I can't think of your list of questions here, Anthony. So if I'm answering anything early, let me know. Yeah, it wasn't until we got to the brick and mortar store that we started having a more official club, where there was a format and there was a time, a set time that we were doing it, which I think right away just became 4:00 Saturday afternoons, when we would get together, sit around the table and talk comics, and we kind of developed it into how we were going to. And then as it became a podcast, we formatted it even more to the point of, where we are now.
Yeah, the Secret Empire event was just starting, and it kind of coincided with the Free Comic Book Day. Like, a lot of events were happening at once, and I remember with Secret Empire, then we had just a couple of us around the table. I remember having like an outline on my iPad, and it was just unrecorded, but it felt cool to kind of just everyone sit down and everyone did their homework for the week, and we just kind of had I probably still have the notes from that first episode, because I don't think it really revolved in much kind of how it's evolved into now, but it was mostly like, we're going to talk about this one issue and then just whatever happens. But it was kind of cool just to kind of have that official meeting and just be like, all right, everyone's here. Okay, here we go. Now listen up. There's no recording, no fun little banter in between. It was just kind of like, we're getting right down to business and we're talking comics. But yeah, it's the whole club experience has grown throughout the years.
Yeah, I have a hard time remembering like who was at any of these club meetings before we started recording it as a podcast. I think Dan was there for a couple. Pepsi Jake joined the club, but I don't think besides he might have popped into like one meeting, he just never showed. I think he just joined for the discount. But then we started recording, and I believe first episode, and we can go back and listen now, because all of these archived episodes are up on Spotify. Well, not all of them, but I think you were up to like the first 8.
Yeah, we're up to 8 as of this recording now.
As of this recording. So you go back and you check it out, and the very first one was myself and Anthony, and then the other 2 Davids, other David and other David. One of them became known as Dr. Kurt's dad. And that was it for our first recorded meeting. The second issue number 2, we had a special guest, Jim, and then I think the third issue, we were joined by Katie, and then by 4, Katie and Jim were both there, and kind of became just like regulars from there on.
Yeah, I remember it being exciting when, not knowing who was going to return that next week, just being like, did they like it? They're going to come back every week or maybe just once a month. And because I was definitely going to be there every single time that I could if I didn't have like a convention to go to. And so whenever someone would pop up, be like, it's working. We told people to show up, and here we got a couple people here and there. But it was so like nerve wracking, just wondering like, oh, I hope they come back, hopefully it's fun.
And we had a couple of times that it was pretty big. It never got quite as big as the D&D group, but but yeah, we must have came close, a couple of times when we had people there, start adding in more tables, which was done for the large D&D group, but yeah, you'd have more and more people, and it would that too would kind of fluctuate, and we'd have a week where it was just a few of us. Boy, I swear there was one time it was like me and Anthony just had a stack of books. I was like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, like I don't think you had anything to talk about. No one else showed up, and I'm like, well, I read 25 books this week, so here we go.
But usually we had, I'd say we typically would have about 4 people, at least on most occasions, if not more. And once in a great while we would have less than that, but that was it. And we'd have the same core group of people that came regularly, and it's still, in a lot of ways, we have kind of that core group, which has changed a little bit. Dr. Kurt's dad's with us a little bit less, but still participates when he can. Jim and Katie are still here. Haven't been able to get rid of Anthony, and Kirby and Damon have been with us for quite a while now. So it's nice that we still have this group of people that we can more or less count on, seeing all of our pretty faces every week.
Speaking of Dr. Kurt's dad, he did send a message, by the way. So I'm going to cue up his little words here. He had said...
the video, but it's just this ceiling for about 20 minutes.
Yep. So he goes, I feel bad I can't make it today, but I know that the first time I walked into the Cowl, it was my kind of place. People laughing, talking, and loving comics together, and I am glad we continue the spirit the Cowl created on the podcast. So, yeah, he wanted to send those words out. You had also mentioned D&D, so as a belated transition over to Jim. Go ahead when you're ready there.
Well, thanks, Anthony, because that's what kind of I wanted to talk about is some of my favorite memories there. Quite early on as I came in as a customer, we talked about, what other things we could do, gaming, whatever. And it took a while for it to actually get off the ground. We started with a session of a couple other board games where we just get a little bit of a group together. I played Munchkin. We had an Avengers game. We had a Buffy game. And then there's another guy who brought some role-playing games in every once in a while. We did that as one-shots. And eventually we did get a little bit of a core group to play D&D. We started that. That expanded a little bit. Like David said, it actually got to be bigger than our regular club group. So at 6 o'clock, there's more people waiting in the store that aren't doing anything because they're waiting to play games in the back. So that got to be fun. And that core group is still going. Even though we have COVID-19 and we don't have a store, most of them are still, or a lot of them are still playing together, either online or they come to my house now and we still get together, and it's still good to have that going. As far as the store, I just wanted to say how I was always super impressed that the first day I walked in there, it's like I talked to Kurt about ordering a book that I heard was coming out. And he's like, okay, we'll do it. Basically, it's like, asked for my name and phone number. Didn't need any money. It's like, wow. It's like, I had never been a regular customer of comic book stores. I never had a pull list or anything like that before. So I was impressed that that's all you did. And, it was like, fine. And then, unfortunately, I had a broken foot and wasn't able to get in for quite a while. And he still held all those books until I was able to come back. So I was super impressed by the customer service that you guys had exhibited to somebody who maybe had seen twice at that time. It was like, wow, that was great. So I would really appreciated that. And the other thing is, you always had so much stuff on the shelf for such a small shop that it got me trying much more than the Batman and Justice League that I had always just read. And I have found so much more, many more things that I enjoy reading every month, because of that.
Cool.
And as much as we had, of course, like any store anywhere, there's always going to be those people that come in and they complain because we didn't have this that they thought that we should have had or this, but we always tried to keep a pretty good selection. I mean, there were certain comics that we kept on the rack, even though that they didn't sell, just because you felt like a comic book store has to have that on the rack. And then we always tried a number of things. I mean, we had a pretty big indie section, and we always tried new things, and we'd throw stuff on there, and if they didn't catch people didn't catch on after so many issues, then we would stop getting that, and then we would pick up something else and we'd try that. And we just kept kind of revolving through until we'd find the stuff that people wanted, and then we'd still try new things. And even the stuff that didn't sell, we would still hold on to as back issues, or they'd first go into the once we needed the room on the racks to make room for something else, they'd go into the 25% off recent back issue box before eventually being transitioned into our back issue section. And we never sent anything back to Diamond. Anything that we ordered from them, we held on to. If it didn't sell, it slowly made its way into the back issues to expand that back issue section, which grew considerably over the years from the basement days, where it was the majority of my comic books. And I think, I donated the majority of my comic books to it so that we would have something to start with. Dr. Kurt's dad donated a bunch of his stuff to it, and that became our initial back issue section that was in the original basement days. And then we would slowly grow a little bit in our back issue section until we were introduced to Kirby, who had a lot more back issues, and we were able to work out that deal with you to get more in. So we always had back issues to put in, and it was always that challenge of how do we form these up?
My back. Back issues.
Yes. There was always that challenge of how do we get more out? And I always, that was my thing. Kurt tended to be like, well, we're running out of room. We don't have room to get this out there. And again, challenge. And I always, my thing was always, if it's not out there, we can't sell it. So I always really tried to get more and more out there. And we went from one table with back issues to about 4 or 5 tables, and they would just wrap around the corner. And, we'd try to see where we could put back issues just so that we had more of it out there. We expanded the trades and stuff, like I said, from the 1 bookcase to 3 bigger bookcases. And So we always really tried to have a great selection of stuff. But yeah, I think one like I think we've had like 2 negative reviews on Google, and one of them didn't make any comment, and the other one was it commented on how we had like a poor selection, which just blew my mind. And but of course, with those two, I would go on there and I would ask, like, what was it that you were looking for that you couldn't find? Because we were always trying to better the store, and of course, then you don't get a response from the person. So, but yeah, you'd always have that handful of people that would complain that you didn't have something that they thought that you should have had, even in a store that size and having as much stuff out as what we ended up having.
Can't
Hey,
have
hey
a comic
guys.
book store without controversy.
Hey guys, I'm sorry I'm late. So yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody here. It's pretty cool. Glad that you could come to the shop and I can order the comics for you. And it's always one of my favorite things to do. So,
That
all right,
Pat
I'm
Mac
gonna go.
fault.
Yeah, Kurt, your video's a little washed out there, but yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, we're being joined by Kurt, who's hanging out at Anthony's place.
Yeah.
Hi, Kurt.
So how's it going? I gotta go take a smoke break. So see you later, guys.
Okay, bye.
So yeah, so that was a good good discussion there. Some of that stuff I think segues perfectly into what I was going to mention is that as the club members kind of became regular customers and they started rolling in throughout the years, the cowl will expand with the things that we've mentioned. Talked about the D&D club, the comic club. There was a Lego club. You would go to some conventions when you could, and it was kind of cool to kind of expand the store, beyond the actual location. As the shop owner, how did all of those type events go just as a whole of just trying to branch out beyond just selling books at, off the shelf and just to kind of get the word out there and spread the store a little more?
I think a lot of that stuff we did just because we enjoyed doing it, not necessarily to expand things. I mean, it was always helpful if we were able to use something to expand, as a business and whatever. But the Lego Club, for example, that really stemmed from my son, Ethan. He's huge into Legos and everything, and we were trying to find something for him to do, and couldn't find a Lego club that was close by. Like the closest one was like 2 counties away. So we're like, well, we'll just make our own. But it's also a good example of how difficult it was to kind of spread the word and get people to join in on some of these things. The Lego Club, eventually we canceled it because we just didn't have the people joining up for it. It didn't take off like we thought it would have. And I'm sure part of that was just a lack of being able to get the word out. But we certainly tried, and we gave it a pretty good shot. The D&D group, I mean, it took quite a while to actually get that to take off. We would have a number of game nights and stuff like that, and some of them did pretty good, and then others didn't. I felt bad for Brad because it seemed like every time he came in with some sort of role-playing game or something that he wanted to do, and we would try to advertise it, and we would try to get people interested, there'd be like 2 people that would show up for it. So it took quite a bit of work to get a lot of that stuff to take off. One of the most successful events that we had, aside from like a free comic book day and whatever, was our annual Life Day event. That we would do our showing of the Star Wars Holiday Special, and everybody laughs and jokes and complains about how just god awful it is, but we never had a problem getting people in there to come in and celebrate, just our community, because that's what it was. I mean, it was essentially a replacement for like a Christmas party or something like that, and it was Star Wars Holiday Special, so people are going to come see that just because, it's like, who turns away from a train wreck?
It was because of Anthony's cookies, I think, that everybody came.
Was it? I thought
Free cookies.
I thought maybe it was Bantha Surprise that had people coming in.
Nah, man, the real trick of it is all the short films that we premiered beforehand.
So
Bantha's just surprised, the thing that you call when the cookies come out.
that's afterwards. You go home and you have the Bantha Surprise. But yeah, we did like the film night that wasn't the holiday special, and
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
that went well, because who'd have thought that I could have got that many people in there to watch some movie that I made. But it was fun, not just making the movie, but showing it and getting to share that with everybody, and Anthony getting to share his. So that was nice, really, to be able to have some way to do that, because without having the shop, it's not like I could have gotten an audience, maybe a captive audience, literally, but but that's about it. So it was really nice to be able to find a way to show my films and actually be able to have an audience that appreciated them for what they were and enjoyed seeing them, and give a couple people to participate in doing that. Still feel bad because I didn't realize until we were showing it that I screwed up and deleted Jim's name off the credits accidentally. It got removed, and it was put in afterwards. It's back in there, but we're showing it and Jim's name wasn't even on there, and he made his film debut in one of my films. So
I just want my Oscar.
All those films are available on YouTube if you'd like to see them.
they are. I was recently talking to Anthony about possibly at some point doing another one once you can actually get a few people together without putting masks on and everything, and being able to do something like that. I wasn't going to do another one unless I came up with a good idea and something that was different, something I thought would be fun, whatever. And I think I have something. So.
Well, you had mentioned Bantha Surprise. So, surprise, I have a pre-recorded video here from the one who whipped up the Bantha Surprise and whipped and whipped and whipped. Okay, so here we go. Can you all see the black screen?
Yeah, it's a nice black screen we have there.
Hi, Eric again. So, looking back on the cowl, I think one of my happiest memories was the very first time I walked in. I looked around, I saw the geeky action figures, Spawn, X-Men, a variety. And then I walked further in, and I see comics on walls and boxes of back issues. And I'm just like, West Bend does have a comic book shop finally. And I have to say, it was pretty good while it lasted. And I was able to immediately just start a list, and I was like, oh, finally, because I had not actually been actively collecting comics for almost a decade at the time. And I know further down the road, I got a text from David telling me, hey, stop by the shop. I think Kurt has something you want. Now, anybody who's been, listening to the podcasts or watching them knows that I am probably the Punisher fan. And Kurt pulls out this box full of back issues like from the 80s, 90s, 2000s of Punisher comics, many which I do not own, many special one-shots, many, variants, and I'm just like, I was just geeking out looking throughout the entire thing. And I remember, they were like, well, I know you can't buy the whole thing, but, we'll just start pricing it out. And I was able to buy it piecemeal, which is, something I have to say I really appreciated. I mean, seriously, if Kurt and David, you're watching this right now, I have to say thank you. Because now I have a much greater Punisher collection, and that is in no small part from the cowl. And I also have to say another thing was the community. Just being able to come in, talk with random people about the stuff they were reading, about what I was reading, and I know, Anthony, you were no small part of that. And I have to say, by doing that, I was able to actually expand my comic horizons. I mean, previously I had been strictly Marvel, maybe a little DC. But through all the different discussions, I started opening myself to other comics. And now, I mean, Marvel is now less than half the stuff that I purchase. Also for reference, before Crimson Cowl, my collection consisted of 3 long boxes. 1 Punisher, 1 with Deadpool and Daredevil, and 1 miscellaneous. I now have perhaps 12 long boxes in the basement that are now segregated by more than just simply being Marvel or DC. So I can honestly say that were it not for the community that the cowl presented, I probably would not have become as passionate a comic collector as I currently am. So for that, I say, David, Kurt, thank you. And Anthony, though you have puns which have constantly made me want to hurt you in many different ways, you guys have affected my hobby greatly. So for that, I thank all of you, everyone at the cowl. I don't look at it as an end because, the people I've met, they're still there. So.
Except for Jim, because he walked
away. Thank you for the good times and for those that are still to come. Peace.
Cool. All right, we are going to be winding down here. Let me close out this video. Kind of the last thing I kind of want to bring up here, going into the year 2020, can you kind of talk about the outlook of the shop, kind of what went into the hard decision of not renewing the lease once you're kind of making those decisions, crunching some numbers, and just kind of really looking at seeing what 2020 could hold for you?
Yeah, well, I think even before going into 2020, there were some problems. Probably as far back as like 2018, there were some things going where we would have to discuss, like, seriously, do we want to keep this going? And there'd always been those moments where we'd have to go back over things and think, how have we done this year? Is it worth it? Because there is a lot of work that goes into running a business like this. Having a comic book store, it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money, and so you really did have to look at that and go, okay, what are we doing here? The lease is coming up. What's going on? What is the right thing to do? And both Kurt and I have had moments where we had other things going on outside of the business that would make us think, okay, can I do this? I've got, Kurt had some stuff in going on in his personal life at one point where he kind of came to me and said, hey, you know, I'm not going to leave you hanging here or anything, but, you know, I want to step aside, you know, and get out of this. And so I started looking at my options, and, you know, couple of you kind of knew what was going on at that point. Um, you know, and trying to look at, can I do this on my own? Can I run the store by myself? You know, thinking, okay, do I need a partner? Do I need to find a different partner to keep it going? And so we finished up, you know, 1 year kind of doing that, and with Kurt saying, okay, you know, um, I've kind of gotten through what I was going through. You know, I never really wanted to hang it up because this is what I want, you know, and this kind of, you know, was his dream just as much as it was my dream. So, you know, we made the decision at that point, okay, we're gonna give it another year, and we're gonna see where that year leads us. So we went through 2019 with high hopes, looking at how much we had made, you know, on our profit. Well, profits were really non-existent, just for the fact that we were putting every dollar that we made back into the business to grow it, to try and make it get to the point where it would just sustain itself, and eventually we would make money at it. We started off 2019. We started off pretty strong. We were doing really good, and it looked like things were going to work out, and we were going to start turning a profit and everything else. And then all of a sudden we hit a couple of months where they were like just the worst months ever. Our sales, for whatever reason, just plummeted, and we had a really hard time keeping up with stuff. You know, we were back to where we didn't think that we'd ever be again, paying the rent out of our own pockets and everything else. And neither of us have a ton of money, so I was constantly having to explain to my wife, you know, why I'm doing this and why we're going on, and you know, in no way do I want her to sound like a bad guy here, when in 2018 she was kind of against us not going on into 2019. You know, she was very justified in thinking that, because, you know, it had cost us money that we didn't have, and cost me a lot of time, and I wasn't doing things around the house and whatever. So at that point she was like, you guys just need to be done with it. And we kind of convinced her that, okay, we've made this is sort of our plan for the year. This is where we project things. And again, 2019, we started off strong. We're going for it. Like, yeah, it's going to work. And then we hit, like, not just like a bad month, but we hit two, and then kind of a third that was, you know, just, they really hurt, and it cost us a lot of money. So that put a lot of stress on both of us. It put stress on, you know, my family, you know, not just my wife, but my kids also, because all of them were kind of the same thing. It's like, you know, our dad is never home. And you know, and there was no payoff to it, financially anyways. And it was starting to get to the point where I was so stressed out because the money and the family thing and whatever, and then having a partner who also had things going, because even though things got better for him, then he had some other issues going on, just like I was having issues, where, you know, once again, neither of us were able to confidently say, like, yeah, we can keep this going. And we got to the point where towards the end of the year, I mean, it was well before the end of 2019 that the decision was made that there wasn't going to be a 2020, at least not in the way it was. And that's kind of when I started developing a new business plan, kind of working it out for, depending on whether Kurt would be involved or Kurt wouldn't be involved. And we knew at that point that 2020, once our lease was up, we were going to close the brick and mortar. We were going to move it back to the basement. We were going to keep a handful of our good customers, but they would have to agree to certain things in order to continue to do business with us. And, you know, it just, I don't know. There were a lot of things going on to it. And it wasn't like some quick decision where we decided to close the store and whatever. But I think, in the end, we definitely made the right choice, because had we continued, we'd have gotten shut down anyways by COVID-19. And we were at a place where I just, there was no way that we would have recovered from it, and we would have been completely screwed. So we got out of it and we closed it down on our own terms, which, looking back on it, I'm just so thankful that we were able to do it that way, rather than having that decided for us and everything else. The one thing that the COVID-19 did kind of finish off is the business as we were going to do it for 2020 and beyond. We actually had it worked out. So the way we're doing it with all of you as our customers, and doing it from my house, the way that we were going to do it, and doing some online sales and doing cons and doing this and that, we actually were going to make a lot more money than what we were making having a brick and mortar store, with a lot less work and time and everything else. But of course, COVID-19 put an end to all the cons. It put an end to all of you being able to come to my house to do this in person and to pick up your comics. But most importantly, it put an end to Diamond, the distribution for a number of months, and really broke the relationship that Diamond had with DC and all this other stuff going on. And so it just, for us, that it killed the business completely, to the point where we're now just, done, decided to pull the plug. And so now it's just a matter of, like, the business is done, and where do we go from here?
I'll jump into my words here. I've told versions of this in the past, but overall, and I had heard about the business through one of Kurt's friends, who I didn't know. I didn't know Kurt or David. I was actually at a comedy event in Milwaukee talking about Buffy comics, and the person behind me, she was like, "There's Buffy comics?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's all these." And I start talking about all the seasons continuing on after the TV show. And then she's like, "Oh, a friend of mine is opening a comic shop in West Bend." I'm like, "Well, that's great," because on the way here, the drive down, I was talking to my buddy, being like, "Man, I wish there was a really good shop nearby, because I've been shopping online. I've gotten some bad service at some other places that I have to drive a little further to. But I'm like, man, I wish I had a comic shop close to me." And then she gave me the information. I sent probably a ridiculously long email saying who I was, saying, "Here's all the comics I buy, and if you guys order this, I'll come in and buy them, and I'll buy more, and I'll show up, and you won't have to worry about me not coming in and get them, because I love comics, blah, blah, blah." And that led me to getting an invite to check out the making of the shop prior to the opening day, kind of introduce myself. That's where I met the Silver Surfer as well in person, so that was pretty cool. And then basically the summary of just hanging out in the basement, open to close, not knowing these guys, and quickly forming a friendship that basically felt like I had known them all my life, that I've known them since grade school and things like that. And it was all just surrounded around the love of comic books, pop culture, talking movies, and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, and then having the excitement of going to the store. And I've had so many people throughout the years say, like, "Man, you like comics, you should open up a comic book store." And I'm like, I've never really had that dream, but I had the one dream of being that guy who's always at the comic book store that doesn't officially work there, but he's just there hanging out, and he's talking with people and maybe recommending things, and just basically, you don't have to worry about punching a time clock and, showing up on time, even though I would have, obviously. But that was kind of the dream, to just be that guy that's over there, maybe sitting on a couch or something. And essentially that's what it became. And that was like, oh, this was the dream that I was talking about. And thanks to David and Kurt, who took the weight of actually running the business, while I got to reap all the benefits of fulfilling my dream and buying comics and recommending and meeting all of you guys, kind of jumping in with the comic club and kind of saying, all right, I used to do a comic club or a comic book podcast, so maybe we could start recording and kind of put it out there, and maybe that'll attract more listeners. And that turned into all the events that everybody has talked here, all the awesome memories. But essentially, Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles, though never knowing either David or Kurt prior to meeting them, they fulfilled a dream that they probably had no clue they were doing beyond their own dream. But my own dream here, and possibly a lot of yours as well, just kind of finding that community. We've all talked about it, and that basically kind of summarizes the experience and the friendship. I mean, it went from showing up all the time at David's house, and that was at one end of it, and then the far end spectrum was like wearing his wife's dress in a movie that he videotaped me in. So, I mean, that's a real tight friendship, and I can't say I could get that with any other comic shop owner than David and Kurt. So,
and that is a story how Anthony became the J to Kurt's Silent Bob, as they stood outside his shop while Kurt smoked his cigarettes.
You know, Anthony, you definitely fulfilled your dream, because when I first got into the shop, I thought you were an employee.
Hmm.
You know, because every time Dave was with a customer, that you'd show me on the rack where something was that I was looking at when I was all new and all that, and you'd explain stuff to me. And I thought, man, this guy's got it good. He gets to sit on a couch all day and get paid to do this. And then come to find out, no, you're not an employee.
Yeah,
Anthony, I just realized you're Brian Johnson.
Oh, awesome. And which means that I also have the successful podcast, which is true because we have millions of listeners. Got a Patreon coming in. I'm sure my several season reality show is going to be, you know, AMC is going to be knocking down my door. So yeah, I'll take that comparison. But yeah, what's that?
Tell him, Steve, Dave.
That would have been the perfect ending. But kind of what Damon had said too, that was part of the experience of like, and I've said this one before, Jacob, who is the one who originated the Jacob's Birthday Battles, the first Saturday of every month here on this podcast. But Jacob came in, he's the prime example of anybody that had walked in the door. He showed up, he's wearing a Guardians of the Galaxy movie t-shirt. He was kind of browsing, you know, kind of we said hi, kind of let them browse for a little while, check in on them, see if they needed anything. And he goes, I've never read a comic book before. I've never been in a comic shop before. I like Guardians of the Galaxy, the movie. Is there Guardians comics? And me and Kurt just look at each other, and Kurt knows. He's like, yep, Anthony's got it. So I'm just like, all right, here we go. Where do you want to start? You want to start with 1969? You want to do the 1990 run? How about 2008? Or maybe we should just catch you up with 2012, because that's kind of catches you up to the current. And it was just fun, basically, just throwing all this at him, but in a very easy way, because it would have been very overwhelming to be like, all right, here's 50 years of comics you have to read, go. Instead, I was like, well, you like the movies. Let's just concentrate on this starting point. And if you have any questions, you know, he ordered a trade paperback. It came in. He was excited to buy it. And I'm like, yeah, if you have any questions, just let us know. And he left. And me and Kurt sat down, just talking and reading and hanging out. And it was maybe like a half hour later, Jacob came back in. He's like, yeah, so Thanos, can you tell me more about? And we're like, well, he took that literally. Like, he came back right away. I was expecting him, you know, see him in a couple weeks or something. And he's like, all right, cool. And then he left and he went to go read more. And it was just kind of a cool experience just to kind of help shepherd in, you know, new readers like that. And that's happened with many other people too. But that's always the prime example I always go to. And I've had that too, where people thought, you know, that I own the shop at times, and they're just like, oh, you one of the owners? I'm like, oh, no. And kind of what Damon thought too with being an employee. But that really, all of that, like Damon said, fulfilled that dream of just being that guy in the comic book shop. Not necessarily a Captain Sweatpants from a Big Bang Theory, because I, you know, normally just wear jeans. But I guess I'm the next, I'm adjacent to Captain Sweatpants. So.
Yeah. And, you know, you not being an official part of the store, you know, that is something that had been offered for anybody who doesn't know, at least two occasions that I can think of where we actually did offer that to Anthony. and so yeah, he immediately turned down those offers, because he enjoyed what he was doing, and that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to keep enjoying doing what he was doing, not be all stressed out about doing what he was doing like I was. So,
Yeah, I think that if I was in that ownership position, I was thinking of all the comics I wouldn't be able to read because I would be, doing this and that. While that would have been an exciting job, but yeah, like you said, there really wasn't that much hesitation as much as obviously I'd want to help out, but that sort of the business wasn't really the dream as you guys had.
no, and you got to continue doing that until we ended up pulling the plug on it. But no, and that's great. My dream was to own the comic book store. I got to do that for a while. I would love to do it again. If I was in a position where I could go back into it and feel that I could do it successfully down the road, that is something that I would potentially do. And yeah, I suspect that if given the opportunity down the road, that you would perhaps continue to live that dream of being the guy in the comic book store that doesn't work there, but everybody thinks he works there.
Yeah, what are you doing Wednesday? Does that sound good?
Actually, Wednesday I'm busy. Wednesday I will be recording a brand new episode of Under the Cowl.
Segue to everybody.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know what anybody else is doing Wednesday, but yeah, so that's a new thing, Wednesday night, probably about 8 o'clock. It's a little bit later than it used to be, but have other commitments. Got a kid that's not driving yet, needs a ride home from work all the time, and whatever. But but that's okay. I'm taking them to the DMV Monday to get his temps, so we'll see.
All of your kids are growing up before my eyes, so.
Yeah, I know, and you know how quick Ethan is growing? Like a few days ago, he was standing like next to me, and everybody's going, "Oh, is he as tall as you yet?" And we're going, "Nope, he's not quite there." And not kidding, it was like 3 days later. I was looking at him like, "Did you grow again? Are you taller than me?" And sure enough, we stand next to each other, and now we're at a height where it's like questionable. He might actually have me beaten now. So,
Yeah.
and this is within like 3 days.
Yeah,
So,
with people watching the video, this is what Ethan would look like if he was sitting down at the club.
yeah, next to me.
That's
Yeah.
what he would look like.
You wouldn't know he was there because you'd only see a torso, and you might get to hear, "Hi, Ethan."
Excellent, excellent. So yes, all of those have been great words. Is there anything, final words to kind of close out this 150th celebration of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club, coinciding with the end of an era for the business as it is? Anything final words to say there?
Final words, because this is also our last episode of. No, I'm kidding. No, there's no final words. No, you can't shut me up.
This is just the beginning.
But I would like to say, and we've done kind of this shutdown thing in segments. And Eric's not here, so he'll have to watch this as a pre-recorded video. I want to thank him again because a while back there was this surprise party for Kurt and I that was really kind of like the celebration for us in person, to be able to get together and talk about it, so that was great that we were able to have that party, and Katie wasn't able to be there, but most of the people that you would have expected to find at a party like this were at this party. I'm still shocked that my wife kept it a secret. But I just wish that party could have gone on for a little bit longer. It ended up so abruptly. People are leaving. I'm like, but I didn't even get to talk to And but it was sort of like one of these phases in shutting the business down and getting to say goodbye without really saying goodbye. And so this is just another one of those. This is kind of the final goodbye to the business thing right here, although it's not really, because we're still getting some stuff rolling in from Diamond. So there's a few of you that it's got to come by and buy some stuff. Kirby's got a bunch of stuff to get, so it still can't be goodbye. But I want to thank all of you, like, very sincerely, because I measure the success of Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles not by the business end of it, but by the community end of it, because that was just as important to me as having a successful business, and we accomplished that. All of you are responsible for that, because one person can't be a community. It takes others, and it's been a really great community. Love all you guys, and I'm so happy that we still get to get together on Zoom, maybe in the future in person again. We'll see, and just continue getting together and talk about our comics and the things that we love. So here's to I don't have a drink in my hand, but here's to many more.
No matter how hard you try, you're never getting rid of us. We know where you live.
So
Problem having a shop in your house.
that will cap it off for issue number 150 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. This entire time, I've been restoring the Skrull Empire to its formal glory.
I've been just me.
I've been starting new beginnings.
I've been Bubba Dude.
I'm Rogue 5, standing by.
Nothing's over till we say it's over.
And then Eric says something like, I love Frankencastle. To be continued.